They sent the infertile mail-order bride of the cowboy as a joke, but she came back carrying twins. He had lived alone long enough that silence felt normal. The cowboy woke before sunrise every day, not because anyone told him to, but because the land demanded it. The air on the ranch was always cool in the early morning, and the sky stretched wide and empty above him. He liked those moments before the sun rose fully, when everything felt calm and honest. There were no expectations, no conversations, and no reminders of the life he thought he might have had if things had turned out differently. His ranch was not large or famous. It sat far from busy towns, surrounded by open fields and worn fences that needed repair more often than he liked to admit. Years earlier, his parents had owned the land, but after they passed away, most people assumed he would sell it and move somewhere easier. Instead, he stayed. Some said he was stubborn. Others thought he was hiding from the world. The truth was simpler. The ranch was the only place where he felt he belonged. His days followed a routine that rarely changed. He checked the animals, repaired broken tools, cleaned equipment, and managed whatever problems the weather created. Some days were quiet and easy. Others brought sudden storms or unexpected expenses that made him wonder if he could keep going. Still, he worked steadily, rarely complaining. He had learned long ago that life did not reward self-pity. Neighbors were few, and conversations were rare. When he drove into town once every few weeks for supplies, people greeted him politely but kept their distance. He was known as a good man, but also as someone who preferred solitude. Some wondered why he never married. Others assumed he had tried and failed. The truth was that he had stopped looking after several disappointments. He believed that no one would choose a life filled with hard work, uncertainty, and isolation. One evening, after returning from town, he found a letter waiting in his mailbox. The envelope looked official, stamped with an agency logo he did not recognize. He opened it slowly, expecting paperwork or advertisements. Instead, he found information about a marriage introduction service. He almost laughed. Years ago, a friend had jokingly signed him up after too many conversations about his lonely lifestyle. He had forgotten about it entirely. The letter explained that a woman had agreed to travel and meet him as a potential partner. He frowned, unsure whether to take it seriously. He had not asked for this, and the idea felt strange. He placed the letter on the table and tried to ignore it, but curiosity stayed with him throughout the evening. Who would agree to meet a man like him? Why would anyone travel so far for a chance at a life that even locals avoided? Meanwhile, far away, the woman packed her small suitcase with careful movements. She owned very little, and every item she chose carried meaning. Her life had been shaped by disappointment for years. Medical appointments, quiet conversations with doctors, and well-meaning relatives had slowly built a story around her, a story that defined her by what she could not do. Being told she would likely never have children had changed how people looked at her. Some treated her gently, as if she might break. Others distanced themselves, unsure how to speak about something so personal. Relationships had ended one by one, not with anger or cruelty, but with slow withdrawal. Promises faded, and excuses replaced honesty. She learned to expect endings before beginnings. When she discovered the introduction agency, she saw it less as a romantic opportunity and more as a chance to escape the constant reminders of her past. Starting over somewhere new felt like a small piece of hope. What she did not know was that some people at the agency viewed her case differently. They assumed no one would truly choose her after reading her medical history. When matching her profile with the cowboys, a few workers treated it as a harmless joke. They believed the meeting would fail quickly, giving them an amusing story to share later. Their assumptions were careless, but they never considered the real lives behind their decisions. The journey felt long and uncertain. As she traveled, she watched landscapes change through the window, each mile carrying her farther from everything familiar. She wondered what kind of man she would meet. Would he be kind? Would he judge her immediately? She practiced explanations in her head, rehearsing how she might tell him about her past without sounding broken. When she finally arrived at the small station near his ranch, she felt both nervous and strangely calm. There was no turning back now. She stepped off with her suitcase, scanning the area until she saw him waiting nearby. He looked exactly as she imagined, tall, quiet, with eyes that showed both strength and exhaustion. He walked toward her slowly, unsure what to say. For a moment they simply stood facing each other, both searching for the right words. He offered a polite greeting and took her suitcase without hesitation. She thanked him softly, noticing that he avoided staring too closely, as if giving her space. The drive to the ranch was quiet. The road stretched long and empty, surrounded by open land that felt endless. She wondered if she could truly live somewhere so isolated. He worried that she would ask him to turn around before they even arrived. Neither spoke much, but the silence did not feel uncomfortable, only uncertain. When they reached the ranch, she stepped out of the truck and looked around carefully. The house was simple but clean. The fields showed signs of hard work rather than wealth. She expected disappointment, yet she felt something unexpected instead. Honesty. Nothing here pretended to be more than it was. He watched her reaction closely, waiting for signs of regret. Instead of criticism, she nodded slowly and said it was peaceful. The word surprised him. No one had described the ranch that way before. Inside, he showed her a small room where she could stay. He explained gently that she did not have to decide anything immediately. She could rest, think, and choose what felt right for her. His kindness came without pressure, and she felt relief she had not expected. The first evening passed quietly. They shared a simple meal, speaking about small things, travel, weather, daily routines. Neither mentioned marriage or expectations. They were two strangers trying to understand the situation without forcing it into something artificial. Over the next days, she began helping with small tasks around the ranch. At first, he protested, worried she might feel obligated, but she insisted. Working with her hands gave her purpose, and she enjoyed learning new skills. He noticed her determination and felt respect growing slowly. Their conversations became easier. She learned about his past, the losses that shaped him, the reasons he stayed when others left. He learned about her strength, though she avoided speaking about the deeper parts of her history. There were moments of laughter, awkward but genuine, and shared silence that felt less heavy with each passing day. Neither realized that the arrangement meant to fail was quietly changing them. What began as uncertainty slowly turned into familiarity. He found himself looking forward to returning to the house after long hours outside. She began to feel less like a visitor and more like someone who belonged. As the sun set one evening, they sat on the porch watching the sky change colors. The wind moved gently across the fields, carrying the scent of dry grass. For the first time since arriving, she felt a small sense of peace. He noticed her relaxed expression and felt something shift inside him, a feeling he had not allowed himself to experience for years. They did not speak about the future that night. They did not need to. The quiet understanding between them was enough, and neither noticed how the fragile connection between two lonely people had already begun to grow into something real. The first weeks passed slowly but steadily, and the rhythm of the ranch began to shape her days. She woke before the sun just like him, though at first it felt impossible. The air was cold in the early morning, and the quiet felt heavier than any silence she had known before. In the beginning, she struggled to keep up, her hands sore and her muscles tired from work she had never done before. Still, she refused to complain. The cowboy noticed her effort even when she said nothing about it. He watched how she studied everything carefully, how to carry tools, how to feed the animals without rushing, how to walk across uneven ground without losing balance. She made mistakes, of course, but she never gave up. That impressed him more than perfection ever could. One morning she tried to fix a broken fence on her own, determined to prove she could contribute. The wire snapped back suddenly, startling her, and she nearly lost her balance. He rushed over immediately, checking if she was hurt. She laughed it off, but he could see she was shaken. Instead of scolding her, he showed her patiently how to handle the tool safely. The moment was small, but it changed something between them. She realized he did not see her as weak. He simply wanted her safe. Life on the ranch was not only physical work, it also meant long hours of quiet, where thoughts had nowhere to hide. In the city, she had always been surrounded by noise, traffic, conversations, distractions. Here, silence forced her to face her feelings. Some days she felt strong and hopeful, believing she could build a new life here. Other days doubt returned, whispering that she did not truly belong. He had his own doubts, too. Each time she smiled or laughed, he wondered how long she would stay. He feared that once she experienced enough of the hard reality, she would leave, like others had before. He tried not to grow too attached, reminding himself that this arrangement was temporary. But slowly he found himself adjusting his routine around her presence. They began sharing meals regularly, and those moments became the highlight of each day. At first, they spoke mostly about work, weather conditions, plans for repairs, small stories from their pasts. Over time, their conversations deepened. She told him about her childhood, about dreams she once had that felt distant now. He shared stories about growing up on the ranch, about learning responsibility at a young age. Despite the growing comfort between them, one topic remained unspoken. She carried the weight of her medical history quietly, unsure how or when to tell him. Every time he mentioned families in town or spoke kindly about children he saw during trips to the market, her heart tightened. She feared that once he knew, everything would change.
Meanwhile, the ranch faced new challenges.
A dry season made the land harder to manage. Repairs cost more than expected, and equipment broke at the worst possible times. Stress followed him everywhere, even into the house. She noticed how he became quieter, how his shoulders seemed heavier at the end of each day. Instead of stepping back, she chose to help more, learning tasks quickly so he would not have to carry everything alone. One evening, a storm rolled across the sky unexpectedly. Strong winds shook the fences, and rain fell harder than usual. They worked side by side in the dark, securing loose boards and guiding animals to safer areas. The work was exhausting, but something about facing the storm together brought them closer. When they finally returned inside, soaked and tired, they laughed at their appearance. The laughter felt natural, not forced, and for a moment neither felt lonely. After the storm passed, the ranch looked different. Some damage needed repair, but the land also felt renewed. She stood outside watching the sunrise the next morning, feeling proud of what they had accomplished together. He joined her quietly, handing her a cup of coffee. They stood side by side without speaking, yet the silence felt warm rather than uncertain. Days turned into weeks, and routine became comfort. She began to understand the animals' behavior, learning their personalities and patterns. He trusted her more with responsibilities, leaving certain tasks entirely in her hands. That trust meant more to her than words could express. Yet inside, she continued carrying a secret that weighed heavily on her heart. She feared that delaying the conversation only made it worse. Some nights she lay awake wondering how he would react. Would he feel deceived? Would he lose interest in building any kind of future with her? One evening after dinner she finally gathered the courage to speak. The sky outside glowed softly as the sun disappeared, and the house felt unusually quiet. She told him there was something important he needed to know. Her voice trembled slightly, and he immediately gave her his full attention. She explained slowly, choosing her words carefully. She told him about the doctors, about the years of hearing the same diagnosis repeated. She shared how relationships ended once the truth became known, how people changed their expectations of her. Speaking the words aloud felt both painful and freeing. He listened without interrupting, his expression calm and thoughtful. When she finished, she waited for disappointment or distance. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and nodded slowly. He told her that everyone carried struggles, and that her worth was not defined by any label. His response surprised her deeply. There was no pity, no awkward silence, only simple acceptance. The relief she felt brought tears to her eyes, though she tried to hide them. For the first time in years, she felt seen as a whole person, rather than as a problem to solve. That moment strengthened their bond more than any shared task or conversation before. After that evening, something changed in the way they interacted. She felt lighter, more open. He became more relaxed, as if releasing a fear he had not admitted even to himself. They began to laugh more easily. sharing stories that revealed deeper parts of their personalities. Still, life was not without tension. The ranch's financial challenges remained, and both worried about the future. Sometimes they argued over small decisions, their exhaustion turning minor disagreements into larger frustrations. But unlike before, they always returned to conversation, choosing understanding instead of distance. One afternoon, while working together near the barn, she slipped and nearly fell. He caught her instinctively, steadying her with firm hands. For a brief moment they stood close, eyes meeting in surprise. Neither moved immediately. The closeness felt unfamiliar, yet comforting. They stepped back quickly, both unsure how to interpret the moment, but neither forgot it. As weeks continued to pass, they stopped thinking of each other as strangers. She began to feel that the ranch was more than just a temporary shelter. He started to imagine a future where the house did not feel empty at night. Neither spoke openly about these thoughts, yet they existed quietly beneath every shared moment. Late one evening, while sitting on the porch, she admitted that coming here had changed her more than she expected. He said simply that her presence had changed the ranch too. The words carried deeper meaning than either of them fully understood at the time. The arrangement that once felt uncertain had transformed into something real, not yet defined, but undeniably important. Each day brought new challenges, new conversations, and new moments of connection that slowly replaced loneliness with companionship. And although neither of them realized it yet, the path they were walking together was leading toward a future neither had ever believed possible. Life on the ranch settled into a steady rhythm, but beneath the routine both of them carried thoughts they did not fully share. The seasons began to change slowly, bringing longer days and warmer mornings. She felt stronger now, moving through her tasks with confidence that surprised even herself. The woman who had once hesitated to lift a tool now worked beside him without needing constant guidance. He noticed the change and admired it quietly. She had become part of the ranch in a way he never expected. Her presence softened the house, turning it from a quiet shelter into something closer to a home. Small details appeared. A blanket folded neatly on the couch, fresh flowers placed near the window, meals that felt warmer and more thoughtful. These changes made him realize how empty life had been before she arrived. Despite the growing closeness, challenges continued to follow them. The dry season affected the land more than expected. Some crops struggled, and expenses piled up. He spent many nights at the kitchen table reviewing numbers, trying to make everything work. She often sat nearby, offering quiet company rather than advice. Sometimes silence felt more supportive than words. One morning she woke feeling different. It was not pain or illness, just a strange heaviness that she could not explain. She assumed it was exhaustion from working too hard and decided not to mention it. She did not want him to worry or think she was unable to keep up. Instead, she pushed through the day as usual, though she felt more tired than before. As days passed, the feeling continued. She found herself pausing more often, needing short moments of rest between tasks. He noticed the change and asked gently if she was feeling well. She smiled and assured him everything was fine, though inside she felt uncertain. Her body seemed to be changing in ways she could not understand. One afternoon while they were repairing a gate, she felt suddenly dizzy and had to sit down. He rushed over, concern clear in his voice. She insisted it was nothing serious, but he was not convinced. He suggested visiting the clinic in the nearest town, reminding her that taking care of herself mattered more than finishing any task. After some hesitation, she agreed. The drive to town felt long and quiet. She watched the road through the window, her thoughts racing. Part of her feared hearing bad news. Another part feared hearing something hopeful that might not be real. She had spent years learning not to expect miracles. At the clinic, the nurse greeted them warmly. The town was small enough that most people knew each other, and the staff treated patients like family rather than strangers. After a short wait, she went into the examination room alone while he remained outside, pacing slowly. Time passed slowly for both of them. She answered questions, explained how she had been feeling, and allowed the doctor to run several tests. The doctor's expression changed slightly as results appeared. Though he remained calm, she felt nervous, unsure how to interpret his silence. When the doctor finally spoke, his words felt almost unreal. He explained carefully that she was pregnant. For a moment she thought she had misunderstood. The word echoed in her mind, refusing to settle into reality. She shook her head gently, reminding him of her past diagnosis. He nodded, acknowledging it, but explained that sometimes unexpected changes happened. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to process the information. Years of believing one story about herself suddenly collided with a completely different possibility. She felt happiness rising inside her, but also fear. What if it was a mistake? What if the hope disappeared just as quickly as it appeared? When she walked back into the waiting area, he stood immediately, searching her face for answers. She struggled to find the right words. Finally, she told him quietly. He froze, his expression filled with disbelief and confusion. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. The drive back to the ranch felt heavier than the drive into town. The news had changed everything, yet neither knew how to react properly. He held the steering wheel tightly, his thoughts moving faster than he could organize. She stared out the window, holding on to a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Once they arrived home, the silence continued. He walked outside to check the animals, needing time to think. She remained inside, sitting at the kitchen table, replaying the doctor's words again and again. The situation felt impossible, like a dream she was afraid to wake from. That evening, they finally spoke openly. He admitted he felt overwhelmed, not because he was unhappy, but because he never expected such a change. He worried about whether he could be a good father, whether the ranch could support a growing family. She shared her fears too. The fear of losing the pregnancy, the fear that everything might disappear if she allowed herself to believe too strongly. Despite their fears, a quiet sense of wonder filled the room. The news represented something neither had dared to imagine. Still, adjusting to the reality took time. Some days they felt hopeful, planning small changes around the ranch. Other days doubt returned, making them cautious about celebrating too early. As weeks passed, they returned to the clinic for follow-up visits. During one appointment, the doctor smiled gently and explained that there was more news. The pregnancy involved twins. The announcement left them both speechless. She laughed softly in disbelief, while he stared at the floor as if trying to understand how life had changed so quickly.
The journey home that day felt different.
Instead of heavy silence, they shared small smiles and nervous laughter. The idea of raising two children at once felt overwhelming, but also strangely exciting. Back at the ranch, they began preparing slowly. He repaired extra rooms in the house, fixing old boards and repainting walls that had faded over time. She organized small spaces, imagining how life might look in the future. Neighbors who had once kept their distance began offering help, bringing supplies, or simply stopping by to check on them. Despite the growing support, moments of fear continued. One evening she confessed that she worried about being seen differently again, not as herself, but only as a mother. He reassured her gently, reminding her that she was strong and valued for who she was, long before any new role. Their relationship deepened through shared vulnerability. They spoke more openly than ever before, discussing dreams, fears, and hopes. The uncertainty that once kept them distant slowly disappeared, replaced by trust. As she stood one evening watching the sunset, she realized how far her life had changed. The woman who arrived expecting rejection had found acceptance. The man who believed he would always live alone now imagined a house filled with laughter, yet beneath the growing happiness remained a quiet awareness that life could still bring unexpected challenges. The journey ahead was unknown, but they were no longer facing it alone. The news about the twins changed the rhythm of their lives completely. What once felt quiet and predictable now carried a new kind of energy. Every morning began with careful planning instead of simple routine. He found himself thinking ahead more than ever before, about safety, about the future, about creating a stable place for a family he never expected to have. She moved more slowly now, not because she felt weak, but because she had learned to listen to her body. The doctor had advised her to avoid heavy lifting, which felt strange after months of working side by side with him. At first she struggled with the idea of stepping back. Helping on the ranch had become part of her identity, proof that she belonged there. Sitting and resting felt almost like failing. He noticed her frustration immediately. One afternoon, when she tried to carry a heavy bucket despite his earlier request, he gently took it from her hands. She looked annoyed, thinking he doubted her strength. Instead of arguing, he explained calmly that protecting her and the babies mattered more than any task. His tone carried concern rather than control, and she slowly accepted that allowing help did not make her weaker. The house began to change around them. He repaired old shelves, cleaned out storage rooms, and fixed small details he had ignored for years. She organized the space carefully, imagining where 2 small beds might go, where sunlight would fall during the day, and how to create warmth in every corner. Preparing together made the future feel more real. News traveled quickly through the nearby community. People who had once known him only as the quiet cowboy started stopping by more often. Some brought food, others offered advice or shared stories about raising children. At first he felt uncomfortable with the sudden attention, but he realized it came from genuine kindness. The ranch, once isolated, slowly became connected to others again. One evening, an older neighbor arrived with a wooden cradle he had built years earlier. The man explained that it had been sitting unused in his barn and felt it belonged somewhere it would bring joy. She ran her fingers gently along the smooth wood, feeling touched by the gesture. Moments like this reminded them that they were no longer alone. Despite the growing support, emotional challenges remained. Some days she felt overwhelmed by memories of her past, years spent believing motherhood would never happen. Hope felt fragile, like something that could disappear if she held it too tightly. He noticed when her mood shifted and tried to offer comfort without forcing conversations. Sometimes he simply sat beside her quietly, letting her know she did not need to carry her thoughts alone. For him, the coming changes brought a different kind of pressure. He worried constantly about providing enough. Late at night he reviewed finances again and again, calculating expenses and planning improvements that might increase income. He did not speak about these worries openly at first, believing it was his responsibility to handle them alone, but she sensed his stress and encouraged him to share his thoughts. One night they talked longer than usual, sitting at the kitchen table with only a small lamp lighting the room. He admitted his fear of failing as a father, of not being prepared for such a huge responsibility. She listened carefully and then reminded him of how much he had already done, how he built a life from hard work and resilience. Her words eased some of his anxiety, and he realized that facing fears together made them less heavy. As the pregnancy progressed, they returned to the clinic regularly. Each visit brought reassurance that everything was developing well. Hearing the steady sounds of 2 tiny heartbeats filled them with quiet amazement every time. Those moments made the future feel closer and more real. Back at the ranch, daily life adapted to new limits. She spent more time indoors, focusing on planning and learning. She read books about parenting, watched videos recommended by neighbors, and prepared lists of things they might need. He often returned from town with small items, blankets, supplies, or tools, each chosen carefully as if preparing for a precious arrival. Their conversation shifted too. They began talking about values, about how they wanted to raise children in a world that could sometimes feel harsh. They discussed kindness, honesty, and resilience. These conversations revealed deeper parts of their personalities, strengthening their emotional connection. One afternoon they walked slowly across the fields, enjoying the warm breeze. She paused often, resting her hands gently on her stomach, feeling the subtle movements that reminded her of the life growing inside. He walked beside her quietly, sometimes placing a protective hand near her back as they moved. The simple act of walking together felt meaningful, filled with shared anticipation. Not every day felt easy. Some mornings she woke feeling tired or worried, questioning whether she could handle the coming changes. He reminded her gently that they would learn together, step by step. His calm presence gave her confidence even during uncertain moments. As time passed, the agency that had arranged their meeting contacted them again. This time the tone felt different, more respectful, almost apologetic. They learned that some people had not taken their situation seriously in the beginning. Hearing this surprised her, but also strengthened her resolve. She realized how far she had come from the woman who once accepted others' expectations without question. He listened quietly as she spoke about it, feeling protective but also proud of her strength. Instead of anger, they chose to focus on the present and the life they were building now. Neighbors continued offering support, helping with repairs and sharing knowledge about raising children in rural areas. The ranch slowly transformed into a place filled with preparation and hope. Even small details, freshly painted walls, new curtains, soft blankets folded carefully, reflected their growing excitement. One evening they sat on the porch watching the sunset, a habit that had become special to both of them. The sky turned shades of gold and pink, spreading across the horizon like a promise. She leaned back in her chair, feeling both peaceful and nervous about the future. He watched her quietly, realizing how much his life had changed since the day she arrived. They spoke about names, laughing softly as they suggested ideas and rejected others. The conversation felt light, but beneath it lay deep emotion. Every word reminded them that something extraordinary was approaching. As the stars appeared in the sky, they sat in comfortable silence. The journey that began with uncertainty had transformed into something strong and meaningful. They had faced doubts, challenges, and unexpected changes, yet each step brought them closer together. The future remained unknown, filled with possibilities they could not fully imagine. But one truth felt clear. Whatever happened next, they would face it side by side, stronger than either of them had ever been alone. The final weeks before the birth felt both long and fast at the same time. Every day carried a quiet sense of waiting. The ranch continued to move forward with its normal rhythm. Animals needed care, fences needed checking, and the land required attention, but everything now revolved around the coming arrival of the twins. Even the air seemed different, filled with anticipation. She spent more time resting, sitting near the window where sunlight reached the floor in the afternoon. From there, she could watch him working outside. Sometimes she smiled at how focused he looked, moving with determination, as if preparing the world itself for the children. He had changed in ways he did not always notice. The man who once accepted loneliness now worked with a sense of purpose that came from protecting something greater than himself. He finished repairing the extra room in the house, carefully sanding the wooden floor and painting the walls in soft colors. The space felt warm and welcoming, far different from the quiet emptiness the house had carried before she arrived. He often stood in the doorway after finishing a task, imagining small footsteps running across the floor and laughter filling the air. Neighbors continued visiting, offering advice or simply sharing stories. Some brought handmade gifts. Others helped him complete heavy work that she could no longer assist with. The ranch had slowly transformed into a place where people gathered, and he realized that he no longer felt isolated from the world. The community that once seemed distant now felt like part of their journey. As her due date approached, emotions became stronger. Some nights she felt excited, imagining holding the babies for the first time. Other nights she felt afraid, wondering if she was ready for such a big change. He stayed close during those moments, reminding her gently that they would learn together. Their conversations grew deeper, filled with honesty and trust. One evening she stood on the porch watching the sunset, her hands resting on her stomach. The sky glowed with warm colors, and the wind moved softly across the fields. He joined her, bringing a blanket and wrapping it around her shoulders. They did not speak much, but the silence felt peaceful. Both understood that life was about to change forever. The day finally arrived earlier than expected. She woke feeling different, sensing that something important had begun. He noticed her expression immediately and understood without many words. They prepared calmly, gathering the bag they had packed weeks earlier and locking the house before leaving for the clinic. The drive felt quiet but filled with emotion. He focused on the road, trying to remain calm despite the nervous energy inside him. She watched the passing landscape, remembering the first time she had traveled this same road with uncertainty and fear. Now she felt something completely different. Hope mixed with determination. At the clinic, the staff greeted them warmly. Hours passed slowly, filled with waiting encouragement, and moments of reflection. He stayed by her side, offering support in simple ways, holding her hand, speaking softly, reminding her of her strength. She drew courage from his presence, feeling grateful that she was not facing this moment alone. When the twins finally arrived, the room filled with quiet joy. The sound of 2 small cries changed everything. He felt emotions he had never experienced before: amazement, relief, and a deep sense of responsibility. She held the babies gently, tears in her eyes, unable to believe that the future she once thought impossible had become real. The first hours passed like a dream. They looked at each other often, sharing silent smiles that said more than words ever could. The journey that began as an uncertain arrangement had led them to this moment, a family built not from expectations but from trust and perseverance. Returning to the ranch felt different. The house that once echoed with silence now carried new sounds, soft movements, gentle laughter, and quiet conversations late at night. Sleep became less predictable, but neither complained. Every challenge felt meaningful because it was shared. He learned quickly, adjusting to new responsibilities with patience. Changing routines no longer felt difficult. Instead, they felt like steps toward something important. She discovered strengths she did not know she possessed, balancing care for the babies with moments of rest and recovery. Neighbors visited often, offering support and celebrating the new arrivals. The ranch became a place of warmth and connection. People who once passed by without stopping now lingered longer, drawn by the feeling of life growing there. One afternoon, as he carried one of the twins across the yard, he paused to look at the land around him. The fields stretched wide, just as they always had, but they felt different now. He realized that the ranch was no longer just a place to survive. It had become a home filled with purpose. She watched from the porch, holding the other twin gently. Her thoughts drifted back to the woman she used to be, the one defined by doubt and labels placed on her by others. That version of herself felt distant now. She had discovered that life could change in ways no one expected. Their relationship deepened through shared responsibility and quiet understanding. They communicated without needing many words, moving together like partners who trusted each other completely. Small moments, shared glances, laughter over simple mistakes, quiet evenings watching the sunset became memories they treasured. The agency that once treated their meeting as a joke reached out again, this time with sincere congratulations. She listened politely but felt no need for validation. The real proof of her journey existed in the life she held in her arms and the home they had built together. As seasons changed again, the ranch continued to grow stronger. He expanded parts of the land, planting new crops with renewed energy. She created routines that balanced care for the children with moments of personal peace. Together they built a life that felt both simple and deeply meaningful. One evening they returned to the porch, the same place where many of their conversations had begun. The twins rested nearby, wrapped in blankets as the sky turned golden. They sat quietly, watching the horizon. He turned to her and said that he had never believed life could feel this full. She smiled softly, knowing she felt the same. Neither of them mentioned the difficult beginnings or the doubts that once followed them. Those moments were part of their story, but they no longer defined it. The journey that started with uncertainty and misunderstanding had become something real and lasting. They had learned that labels given by others did not decide the future. What mattered was the willingness to keep moving forward, to trust, and to believe that unexpected paths could lead to the most meaningful destinations. As the sun disappeared behind the hills, they sat together in comfortable silence, surrounded by the life they had built. The ranch was no longer a lonely place. It had become a symbol of resilience, hope, and the quiet power of two people choosing to stand beside each other no matter how unlikely the beginning had been.